All right, 2:30, ready to go?
There you go.
Okay, folks, it's 2:30. Let's settle down and we'll get started here. First order of business, we have a scribe. Thank you, Brian.
Anybody who wants to contribute, help Braun, please go ahead.
That's life in general works like that.
Okay, since we're on day 4 this week, most of you have probably seen the note well already, but please look at this carefully. This covers our how we behave and act at IETF. Yes. Plus, if there's any intellectual property rights you might have, you either need to disclose those or you do not participate in any discussions. The note really well, this covers our anti-harassment policy. If you feel like you're being harassed or witness any inappropriate behavior, please contact the Ombuds team. As usual, meeting tips. Make sure you all sign in via Meet Echo. Please put yourself in the queue if you want to participate in any discussions. If you're remote, please keep your audio muted until it's time you speak. And if you have a headset, please use that to eliminate any kind of feedback. And here's all the links you might need for the agenda, other things. You've probably seen this numerous times this week. And finally, our agenda. First thing I'm going to run down. Go ahead.
Sorry. Any agenda bashes before we get into the agenda?
Braun would like to bash.
I would like to find the right button.
There we go. I would also like, if there's a couple of minutes, to talk about an object ID partial extension that lets you do part without doing all of it.
Yep, noted. I was going to mention that at the end of me doing the agenda rundown.
Hans-Jörg, I'll happily donate the time allocated in the agenda because I have nothing
There
to...
was someone ahead of you in the queue.
DKG, go ahead.
Hi, I don't see it on this list here, although all of these 2-minute things, I think we're not seeing the full agenda. I just mentioned that I would like to, if we have time, to present some about the unobtrusive end-to-end signatures for email document.
Absolutely. This slide is not the entire agenda, but I was going to mention your draft at the very end. Hans-Jörg.
So Hans-Jörg, sorry again. I would happily donate the 15 minutes allocated for the archives draft because I didn't prepare anything.
Okay, noted. Yeah. So as we see here, I'm going to do a quick rundown of the drafts that we think are close to completion, followed by an update on our currently active drafts, minus the last one there in the list, which Hans-Jörg says he has no update on, followed by some proposed work from Simon and Rick. Morrow is going to give us a talk about MTA hooks, and then we most likely will have time for DKG to talk about his end-to-end encryption draft, and Braun is going to talk about a extension to the object ID extension for limiting the scope of what the server might return. Before we move on, any further agenda bashing? Yes, John.
30 seconds on this, talk something about MAILMAINT space that Mark is doing.
Okay, sounds good.
For the remote 4 feet from you're 4 feet from the microphone.
If we have spare 30 seconds, I want to talk about some mail and deep space stuff that Mark Blanchet is thinking about. Cool. And, Pete has volunteered to work on that.
Ben, you have some agenda bash?
Yes, if there's any time needed, I don't have something super important to say regarding the pack thing. So if you need any minutes, let me know and cut my talk.
Okay. All righty. So going over our document status. First item, UID batches. We've completed working group last call. Daniel did a fantastic job addressing all the various issues. There currently is implementations in iOS, iCloud, and Fastmail. Actually, I sent Daniel some stats yesterday about all the clients that are banging on Fastmail servers using this, so we know it actually works. Is Alexi, are you in the room? I was going to ask Alexi if everything that Daniel addressed was to his satisfaction, but I'll check with him later. I'm going to volunteer to shepherd this draft. The only question I had from the group is, how many people have read this draft recently, or at least post working group last call?
When was that?
Working group last call ended a couple weeks ago.
So last one.
Yeah, there's, how many edits do you think you've made, Dan? Like 4 or 5?
Yeah, mostly small.
The changes that Daniel made, none of them were technical. It was mostly editorial, clarifying the batch size issues that Alexi brought up. If people don't feel comfortable signing off on this right now, we could do a short second working group last call if somebody wants, if a few people want to volunteer to read through it. Any volunteers to read this in the next week or so? Aren't? Thank you. Anyone else? Ron? I've read it numerous times since I did the implementation in Fast and Cyrus. Okay, after this, we'll issue a 1-week working group last call. I'll depend on Bron and Arndt to read it, and then I think we'll probably be ready to ship it. Next one, the IMAP, JMAP keywords and attribute names. This has also gone through working group last call. Jim had some issues when he did the Shepherd doc. I think all those have been addressed. Are they addressed to your satisfaction, Jim?
Since I think there's some remote people, honestly, I haven't had a chance to look at it again since the latest changes, but I will do that in the very near future. But yeah, they're probably worth a very short working group last call, and I will try and do that review in parallel with that.
Okay, so just a 1 week, end of next week kind of thing, work for you? Okay. Sounds good. Next one, wrong recipient URL. I went through the minutes from Bangkok. I think what we had decided on this was John was going to add some stuff to the security considerations. I don't recall what those were because they weren't necessarily in the notes. And actually, they might have been. I'll reach out to you individually. And furthermore, we're waiting for implementations on this. If anybody's aware of any, please either email Murray or I directly or send something to the list. And this is the second draft that Jim has volunteered to shepherd per the last minutes. Thank you again, Jim.
I'm sorry, it isn't shown in data tracker. So.
I don't think I put it in there yet, but I read it in minutes. The wrong recipient URL.
Okay.
Yeah. Sure. Arndt, do you have a comment on this one?
Arndt, I have implemented expires in pretty much in Ruby for Ruby on Rails, and tried to do wrong recipient. Wrong recipient is harder than expires. It doesn't really give me the information I need about what email I can send after having received that. Assuming there's a misclick, then the user should be able to do some sort of communication. Assuming there's not a misclick, the user shouldn't receive any email. And I had problems adding that. I had problems implementing that in the Rails structure, where apps know an email address, but I couldn't tell them how to, what they might or might not do after receiving wrong recipients. So I think.
Yeah, I'm not sure I follow.
Well, sorry. I think it needs a little bit of extra text about what is permitted afterwards anyway.
It's John. I don't think we can meaningfully add extra text because the only semantics of that. Let's see if I can come up with a coherent sentence. That deliberately is intended to be not interactive. Just like it's one click unsubscribe, the same way it's one click not me. I mean, if you want to put something in the body of the message that says click here to explain why you don't think this was intended for you. But the point of this is just that I get a whole lot of mail that is like, here is your bank statement, and it's intended for someone else with a name similar to mine, and all I want to do is click the button and say nope, and whoever sent it to me is in fact not going to negotiate with me, because as soon as they have some idea that I'm not the person, that I'm not their customer, they can't even talk to me. So I mean, I understand why it's confusing, but I don't think there's any way we can. I don't think there's any text we could add that would make it less confusing. A typical, my ongoing example is that I'm still getting my stepmother, who died 3 years ago. Her bank is still sending her account notices, and I can't imagine why. And of course, if I talk to them, they say, I'll have to say we have to talk to the account holder, and I say I don't have a Ouija board.
Yeah,
I'll try to suggest something.
yeah. I was going to ask if you could suggest some text. Barry.
Yeah, barely, but John, correct me if I'm wrong, but the idea of this is that any action taken by the recipient of a wrong recipient message is to have a human look at this and figure out who the real John Levine was. That, there's no automated processing on the part of the sender of the wrong recipient. You know what I'm talking about.
No, this is basically a one-line tweak to the existing one-click unsubscribe. I mean, it basically, there's a URL in the header and it clicks in it. But
I'm not talking about mechanics. I'm talking about, I send you a message, you say wrong recipient. What do I do? And the what do I do, I think, is just you pass it to a human to deal with this. Yeah.
I mean, it's up to the sender if they want to try and figure out who the right recipient was, or if they just figure out the heck with it, we just won't send these notices.
Right. And so maybe the answer is to put text in there that just says that most of the time you'll just have to give this to a human to figure out what to do at this point. Something like that.
I'll take a look. Please put that in the notes.
Ron?
Yeah, I think I was next in the queue anyway, right? Yes.
Yes.
I think that it's the thing that it's probably worth having some mention of in the spec. And sorry, I haven't read through to see exactly what it says about it already. Is that you want to say, in some percentage of cases, people will click this accidentally, and so you must not put their email on a secret hidden list of people who can never receive emails ever again from us because we got a single click from them. Because that happens.
Oh yeah, it's also, it's entirely possible. Like I have a common name, and I'm sure that I am at a large bank, and it's very likely there's someone else with the same name as me who does business with the large bank. So if they say, here's a report about your car loan, I'm going to click wrong recipient because I don't have a car loan, but I still want to get stuff about the accounts I do have.
Pete, are you still in queue?
I was thinking of not saying anything, but what the heck. People can accidentally click one-click unsubscribes to when they didn't mean to. This is reusing the mechanism because you want it to be one-clickable, and what the other end might do reasonably is say, okay, we're going to stop sending email to that email address of this type. I mean, most people who implement one-click unsubscribe, if you are on 20 of their marketing mailing lists, they'll unsubscribe you from the one because they have an interest in continuing to send you the messages. I don't know that we need any significant text that makes this all that different.
I think I agree, but what I would ask the people that think we need additional text to craft some text and send it to John or to the list for review. Does that sound reasonable? Okay, and John, I will get you from the previous minutes. I'll get the discussion about the security considerations for you. Okay, next one is expires from last time minutes. We had talked about an expire because header. John, you would volunteer to write something up. I don't know if that's been done yet or not.
Of course I have not written anything up, but I did actually talk to a few people at MOG, and there was like one large mail provider who wanted expires because, and all of the mail senders said, just tell us what we have to do to get our mail delivered. And everybody else said, not really. So my inclination is, since we actually have reports from multiple actual implementations of the existing expires header, is just to go ahead and document what we have now. And if we find other interesting expires because, I can do an update to it.
Or just doing a separate draft. Okay, real quick, since Alexi just popped in. Alexi, sorry to bother you right away, but UID batches. You had, yeah, Alexi's going to the phone, or the microphone.
Yes, Alexi.
You had comments about how the batch size are described, and Daniel's done a bunch of updates. Are you okay with the current text, or do you need more work done?
Mostly. I think there is one case where it talks about server-side implementation, how batch size can change drastically if messages get removed from the mailbox. I have slight concerns. I think, let me write the email to the mailing list.
Yeah, we're gonna do another 1 week working group last call next week. So if you just want to put it in as part of your review.
As far as I'm concerned, this is the only little thing. I mean, I think my preference is to delete a sentence, or people maybe can explain better what it's supposed to mean.
Okay.
Because guidance on the server side is a bit confusing.
Okay, please do that next week when I issue the last call. Okay, and the last of the documents that we think we're close to completion is autoconfig. There's been a bunch of feedback on the list.
So just before you go on here, what was the action to the expires header? What's the next step?
I think John's going to probably spit out another rev of expires, and we'll see where we're at that point. Did you want to talk about autoconfig?
Yeah. So you may have seen on the list, I did a Shepherd review of autoconfig. I think it needs quite a bit of work, to the point where I think that it will probably need another working group last call due to the number of changes that we're looking for. I don't have a timeline on that. It's up kind of up to Ben. If I think I saw you have joined the call. Yeah, I see you there. If you have any questions, let's get them resolved so that you have all the information you need to do what you need to do here. And then I will do I'll do a second working group last call before we send it up. One other question about that. Barry and I were talking, and Barry talked on the list about what status this should have. I understand why we're looking for informational here, but if it's going to be immediately replaced by PAC, should we just go directly to historical? And we don't have to decide this here. I just wanted to put, while we're talking about status, that is an option for something that's it's in use, but is going to go away soon.
Ben, I see in the queue. Go ahead.
So first off, Maury, thank you for shepherding this. I appreciated your detailed feedback. I plan to address all the points that I said is okay, and also to take a look at the other feedback that I received. And I appreciate that very much. I wanted to wait until after this session to actually do this. I will send out a draft update fairly quickly after this, I hope. There's two open questions in my mind. One is about how you gave feedback to more formally specify the XML. And just to say bluntly, I just don't know how to do that. And there is no single good way to do that, and there's no single way that I would feel comfortable with, both as a reader of the document and as a client implementer of the document. I wouldn't know what to do with a formal spec, and I would go by the examples anyway. Even if there was a formal spec, I would completely ignore it as an implementer and as a reader. So I don't really know what to do there. I haven't seen any other examples that I felt were good and to be copied in the RFCs. I'm quite happy about how the XMPP does that. That it gives little snippets in each section. It says, okay, if you want to open the stream, you send this XML, and gives a concrete example. And I find that very helpful, both as a reader as an implementer. And I try to imitate that. If you want anything else, I need specific instructions what you need. That would be my first question.
So the example that comes to mind for me is DMARC has an XML schema that describes its reporting format. And I would just use, we have an example there of one document that has a schema. Why wouldn't we use that?
Right. I guess you read my reply that I think a schema can be actively harmful, actually. Have you seen my reply to that?
I'm confused about why that would be. Formal specification language is not unusual in a standards document.
Because there is a high risk that people take the schema, validate it fully, and reject all documents that don't follow that schema, which was exactly what we don't want.
We can. I think we'll take this to the list. I remember the conversation that we started. We can find a way to do this.
Okay. Because just to give you
presenting a large example and then tearing it apart to me is an unusual way to present a standard.
Okay. Just to give you just a concrete example, in the very first implementation of this in Thunderbird, I was very strict in validating things. And I was rejecting anything that I didn't expect, and that caused a major problem because once we wanted to add OAuth, for example, or other little things, I was suddenly unable to do that because the validation was too strict, and it would just bail on the old specific on the documents, and it would just not use the document at all, which means I'm breaking the old clients, which means I couldn't change the format. And that was for me lesson learned: do not validate the document. The client should not validate the document. It should just read whatever it can get out of it and ignore the rest. So the lesson I got from implementation was validation is harmful.
If the future of this type of work is PAC, are we really worried about this spec continuing to evolve?
So that's the second question that I have in my mind. There is this idea that PAC will replace autoconfig. I do not believe that this is the case. I do not see PAC as an alternative or successor to autoconfig, even though many people see it this way. I don't think that's going to happen because there's many cases that autoconfig covers that PAC very deliberately by design does not cover at all. For example, PAC requires the ISP to actively change its configuration in order for PAC to work, whereas autoconfig as a design goal wants to cover all the existing configurations that are already out there without any cooperation from the ISP. And that's a completely different design goal, which I think will continue, this discrepancy will continue to exist. I don't think you will get 100% coverage with PAC, and until this point, you still need autoconfig in order to configure the domain. So I think they will coexist even if there is an adoption of PAC.
All right, I don't want to take up the room's time. We have a pretty packed agenda. We can sort something out here over the list.
Okay.
Okay, next up is OAuth profile. Neil, do you want to drive the slides, or would you like me to do it for you?
I think I'll see if I can drive them, and let's see if it works. All right. So just to recap where we were at the last meeting, the main profile specification was in a pretty good shape, but we're awaiting kind of implementation experience. And also it was tied to the auto discovery, the pack stuff that we mentioned, which was obviously not, is much less finished. And so we're still waiting implementation experience to move this stuff forwards, I think. But in the meantime, I've come across a recent RFC, which I think will let us decouple this more, which will solve some problems. So just to give a quick explanation. Is this moving to the next slide? No. Do I have control, Ken?
You should know.
I do now. Yeah. Thanks. Okay. So the way the flow is meant to currently work is the user gives the client their email address. The client then tries to use that to find some kind of autoconfig file. From the autoconfig file, they find what protocols are supported by this server, what the endpoints are for those protocols, and the OAuth issue identifier. They can then use that to start the OAuth flow with this open profile. What I'm proposing perhaps we change to instead is the autoconfig doesn't say anything about authentication. It just gives you the protocols and the endpoints. We already had a discussion previously that this was the best way to do it for everything that wasn't OAuth, to discover from the endpoint itself what authentication it supports. And then RFC 9728, protected resource metadata, is basically a way of, if you have an endpoint, fetching the information about then how you're going to OAuth to get to it. So if we can do that, we can make this whole open flow work, whether or not you used autoconfig, which is also was one of the problems we discussed before, is there will be situations where you can't autoconfig, you might still want to do OAuth. So this, I think, is a lot cleaner if we just separate the two kind of entirely. The way that you get this, if you've not read the RFC, there's two different ways. The first is if you have an endpoint, you can construct a well-known path from it. So suppose you had a JMAP session endpoint like the above, api.example.com/jmap/session. You essentially insert the .wellknown/OAuth protected resource path at the top of the path, and you'll fetch a JSON document from there, which has a few properties described in the RFC, including the issue identifier, importantly, which is the thing we need to then kick off the rest of this flow. The other way you can do it is you can just try and do a get to the protected resource. So I try and get this without any authentication, and obviously get a 401 back, which can have a www authenticate, which can also include a direct URL to this resource metadata. So that seemed to me like it might be a good way of making this work. I'm interested in hearing what other people think it's a good idea to add this into. The one kind of wrinkle with this is only defined in the RFC for HTTP APIs. So for things like IMAP or POP, I would propose we say in here you just use the well-known path at the domain. So but that would mean you'd have to be able to host HTTP at imap.example.com as well as hosting IMAP, obviously on a different port. I don't know whether that sounds bad or great. Any thoughts on any of that, I guess?
Nobody in the room has any thoughts? Nope. Oh, here we go.
We've got a few in the queue now.
Jim.
Hi, Neil. Jim Fenton. I guess kind of ignoring all of the protocol bits here and stuff like that. Has anybody done a kind of a user test of this? I'm a little bit concerned about the user experience when somebody's using a dedicated email client, and then all of a sudden the thing kind of has to flip over to a web browser in order to do the OAuth thing, and then flip back and all of that sort of thing, and whether that's something that's going to be kind of astonishing to your average email user?
This is how almost every email client currently works with Google and Yahoo and other big brothers, because that's the only thing they allow. So I don't think that will be a problem.
Fair enough.
Daniel.
I think this is a good idea, but I still think there is value in having autoconfig also provide something, because I think, like for HTTPS, I think this is a way better solution than doing autoconfig. But for SMTP, IMAP, and those, I would suspect that autoconfig providing I forget what it's called, basically the host name,
the issuer.
Yeah, the issuer thing that sort of then the well-known is there. I think that is going to be way easier. And
okay.
So it's like, I think this is great if you're doing JMAP or something like that. And there's no harm in the client trying to see if they can get IMAP and SMTP working this way. But I think it's just a work with an issuer coming from autoconfig.
Okay.
Ben.
Hi, this is Ben. I concur with Daniel. The issuer information from OAuth is one of the main things that we need from the autoconfig. I don't think it's a good idea to mandate to have an HTTP server on the same hostname as an IMAP server, because that's not usually how things are deployed. I think we should leave it. It's already in there, and I think we should leave it in the spec. The other thing is, I agree with Jim that it is actually a big problem that we go from the IMAP client to the browser. It's a huge implementation problem. I've been trying to implement it again, and it's no end of issues. But I'm not sure we can do much about that given how OAuth is, but it is an issue. And I would rather get away from it for Google and Microsoft rather than extending the same problem through 1,000 other providers. But I don't think we can solve that in this session.
Art.
Yeah, I mean, on Mac and iOS at least, there is a system AS authentication view, I think it's called, which kind of opens a system-controlled web view, but not as a whole browser window, so doesn't have all the browser controls and all that stuff, which makes the flow better, I think. I'm not sure if that's available outside on like Windows and stuff though.
Arndt, I speak to you today as a poor downtrodden user of things. I should say it's a giant pain, but it's a pain that people are used to. We're not adding to it. It's kind of just okay. If it were a simple problem to solve, the other guys would have solved it already. So let's just, sorry to say this.
Thank you, Arndt.
At any given time, my work laptop generally has about 37 browser tabs from this process.
Neil, anything else on this document?
Yes, sorry. I'm just pondering the... Okay, so I think the conclusion then from in the room was that it's worth adding this as an option, especially for the HTTPS, but for the non-HTTP protocols, we don't want to try and like specify a well-known path kind of construction. I guess what we haven't discussed is whether we want to try and put something in like, and this is not really my area, so I don't know very well, the kind of SASL responses inside IMAP or POP or SMTP to kind of equivalent to the www authenticate header, so you can get it in protocol as a kind of, here's where you should go, or here's what the issuer is, or we'll just leave it to autoconfig. As I said, the kind of big advantage of being able to do it like this is that it would work even if you aren't able to use the autoconfig setup. Anyone with more knowledge of kind of IMAP and SMTP authentication. Want to say anything about that?
Go ahead, Daniel.
Yeah, I think one of the, like if you do JMAP, it's nice because you're talking to one endpoint and then you do auth, whatever that thing says. The problem that I see is if you want to do it with IMAP and SMTP or POP3 and SMTP, then now you're talking to two endpoints. If they give you two different OAuth things.
If they give you different ones, obviously, yeah, that's no good. But if they all give you the same, which is mostly what's going to happen, then you can go, okay.
I think it wouldn't hurt to do that, but that, I don't know where that should go. Like if you go in this document or somewhere else. And I also don't know what servers would implement that or which clients would use that and those kind of things. But I don't see, I think it's a good idea, but yeah, that's all.
Okay.
Ben?
So doing it in band and IMAP doesn't solve a problem that I have as a client, because as a client, I first need to find the IMAP server in the first place. So by the time I found the IMAP server, I have already used autoconfig in some way to get the config, and I might rather have the information in there rather than me finding yet another way to find the same information. So it doesn't solve the problem because I first need to find the IMAP server.
Yeah, I mean, as I was saying, this would handle it if autoconfig didn't work for some reason. So the user manually put in, this is the endpoint to connect to. Whether we care about that case as well, that's, yeah, that was kind of the question. Okay. All right. So the other main thing I thought to talk about today was the scope stuff again. So Clinton Bunch sent an email to the OAuth mailing list, but also I think it ended up on the MailMainT mailing list because he wasn't aware of the work that we're currently doing, essentially just proposing standardizing scopes. That's actually already part of this document. But the interesting thing is bringing up the discussion again of how we want the scopes to work. What we currently have in the document is kind of protocol level. You get a IMAP, POP, SMTP, JMAP scope, something like that. But in Clinton's proposal, there was more semantic scopes, which we've talked before, but looking at it again, I think I actually do prefer, because it makes it easier to do protocol upgrades, and also the security is really about what you can do, what you can access, not how you're doing it. And so there's no real need from a security point of view for them to be different. So kind of on the left is kind of more semantic version where I get a mail scope, and then if I have an IMAP server, I can use I'll be able to access that. If I have a POP, I can access that. If I can do it over JMAP, access that. And what I would do is add a column to the JMAP capabilities registry, so you could map capabilities to which standard scopes give you access to those capabilities for JMAP. So I think that. Personally, I think that's quite a nice model, and I'm suggesting that we change to this. But again, any thoughts on that from people?
Ben, go ahead. No, actually, Brian, you got in the queue first.
I was going to say, yeah, I like that idea. I think semantic scopes, I expect the discussion straight after this is going to go to more restrictive partial scopes as well, the read-only and the can only see stuff in the last week, that kind of thing. That certainly a lot of, if you share your photos on your device, a lot of things will say, see stuff I took today, not my entire library going back years.
Yeah, I mean, I think we start with just the scopes for full clients because that's simpler. But yes, then it gets more fine-grained things are useful for other applications, but are hard to specify. I think they deserve probably a whole separate spec.
Ben?
So as long as the mail is defined to allow everything that IMAP and POP3 and SMTP and JMAP for mail allows, then I don't see a problem. But
yeah,
that
that's the idea.
Yes, but that would need to be specified down. You get a problem when this particular definition doesn't 100% match an ISP's definition, and somebody at the ISP says, "Oh, we have the mail defined for Google, and we have the mail defined in the specs. They're the same," but actually the Google definition is slightly off with this. And there's some things, for example, Google has, for some reason, I don't know why, has a real issue with permanent delete. But I need permanent delete for IMAP because their IMAP server requires that permission, but the default mail account permission for Google, if I remember correctly, does not have that. So there you get so we need to be really sure that they really match. That would be my one concern, because there are actually clashes even now in real world because of the understanding of what the scope mail means. That's my first issue.
Yeah.
And I have a second one, but let's just discuss first.
I mean, I would say, yeah, obviously this is a specification. It would have to define what it means. And I think that this gives you full access to mail. Now that's, people, as Bron mentioned, will want more restricted scopes for other applications. But if we're focusing right now, I think on, your actual mail contacts calendar clients, these are scopes we need. They're simple to define. They give you the full access to those sets of data.
Right. So as long as this is really clearly specified, so that needs to be very explicit and verbal and a must and no way around it, that would be fine for me. And I would also definitely want to have that in the same specification, because I don't want to have yet another one to have this outline there. And it would need to be also very explicit on the fact that the intention here is for an interactive mail client, and not somebody doing my scheduling for my appointment system.
Yep.
The other point is about the format. I really dislike the URL format, and providers are going back and forth between the two. And one of the reasons you see in the scope here, because you actually misspelled the last one, and that's not going to work, and it's going to be having a hard time debugging that, because I'm going to look only at calendars. I'm not noticing that you had an uppercase U there, and as an implementer, I'm going to have the same problems, and the scopes are meters long, and I like it short and sweet.
I think, again, this was something Clinton mentioned on the message. Just the recommendation from the OAuth group is that they are URIs, and this does guarantee we avoid collisions. Like, I think when we had protocol names, the chance of collision we thought was very low. Certainly of a collision that also had different semantics. But once we have things like mail, contacts, calendars, you're going to have collisions with existing scopes if we don't have a prefix. So I think it's important that we have something. Maybe we could find something shorter, but this is the standard kind of URN IETF kind of way of doing it. And I mean, I would have said, yes, this one is auto-capitalized by Keynote when I was putting this together, but mostly people are going to copy and paste this stuff out of specs, I would have thought, which makes it less likely to make that kind of error.
Ron?
Yeah, I was going to respond to the must include everything. Certainly over IMAP, there's already ACLs. Just because you have full mail access doesn't mean you're guaranteed to be allowed to delete things or create folders or move things. So I think, yes, we can say it must be the full email access that you provide, but we can't put requirements on what the server allows you to do.
Yeah, I mean, the OAuth flow itself can, if the server chooses, let the user choose which things they then give access to within that flow, and that would be fine. But that's, yeah, I think we can come up with some text that everyone kind of knows what we're trying to get to here. Yeah, that's fine. It shouldn't arbitrarily restrict it. The user may choose if they wish to, and the server also supports them, allowing them to restrict that themselves.
Ben, one last comment, Ben. If you could make it short, that'd be great.
Yeah, response to Bron. So as a mail client, if you're not allowing me to create folders, or more commonly, you're not allowing me to, for example, copy a message from another account into my folder, I will need to know that because I need to disable the UI for that. And that's going to be quite some work for an email client to be fine-grained with the permissions, which most clients don't have. I don't all the code
that's part of IMAP and JMAP already, is that you have the permissions on each mailbox. And so
Yeah, that issue is outside the scope of this document. That's a IMAP ACL thing, and the client should be able to figure that out on its own.
So basically what I'm saying is this scope needs to allow everything that I would otherwise be able to do if I did a normal password login.
Yeah, I think everyone's getting towards the same thing here. We just need to come up with some good wording. Okay, those were the two main things I wanted to talk about, because I think beyond that, yeah, I'm hoping we really can get some implementation experience in the next few months. I will update the document based on for those two things, based on discussions we've had. And I'm hoping, yeah, we can get some implementations, maybe even get it to working group last call by about the next IETF meeting. That'll be good.
Yep. Okay. Thanks, Neil. So you're gonna churn on this a little bit. When you think it's in a state where we might want to send it over to the OAuth folks for review, let us know.
Yep. Okay.
All right. Thank you. Next on the agenda was PAC, but Ben said he doesn't have any new updates. Ben, my question for you is, do you have enough bandwidth to move this along at a fairly decent pace, or would you like maybe a co-author or two?
At this particular moment, like this month, I'm really loaded, but I don't know how it's going to be in the future. I didn't prepare slides because there is no actual change since the last IETF. I've already presented how it works at the last IETF meeting. So I didn't want to bore you just repeating what we have. There haven't been any comments on it. So that's why I kind of wanted to let you drive this, because I put everything that I know from the feedback that we got is already in the current draft. If there's any other changes, it would need to come from the group, from the working group, to actively propose that. This is why I wanted to use this moment to give direction how we should proceed with this.
Okay. I would encourage anybody interested in this work to read the current draft and send your feedback to the list. Okay, thanks, Ben. Next up, Arndt. EAI.
My favorite topic.
You want to Arndt, you want to come up here?
Love to see your lovely face.
Also, you want me to get more exercise and walk a little bit more. How do I use this user interface? Fine, I'll try. I have two drafts. One for nice human addresses and one for the other. These are just the names. You've all read them, I'm sure. One is built from zero and is intended to be enough for provisioning addresses. This is the kind of thing. This defines a syntax fairly complex, and syntax and other rules to match, to encompass everything that you might have on your business card in all of the countries that I know something about so far. This is intended to always be safe. No matter what kind of filter an address runs into, if you stay within this syntax, you're fine. The second document, which John Clensin suggested really, is intended to be simple and allow much more. It allows many email addresses that no human could possibly want to have. For example, you could mix and match Canadian syllabics and kanji, and there's no living person who can type both of those. Not possible on a keyboard even. However, that syntax is great for things like checking incoming syntax if you want to be sure that a to header will not be rendered in such a way that the user can be fooled as to the source of the email, that kind of thing. I have a good excuse for not having done much work on this. However, there is implementation work ongoing. And in the course of the work that I have done, I have spoken to all the people, or people in all the countries that I've dealt with about this, have discovered problems, have also discovered irrelevant problems. Still missing one country, and that's about it. Problems I've discovered include some top-level domains that are not nice for me. The simpler of the two documents says you can't really mix left-right and right-to-left writing. You can in a couple of very limited circumstances that people actually use, for example, Arabic text and Arabic numbers. However, 4 top-level domains do allow mixing right to left and left to right, and 2 of them do it by design. One is in the country that I have not been able to reach. I haven't spoken to anyone who really knows about it, there being global politics. The second is more reachable. I know that they allow mixing, but in point of fact, they only have one domain, and that domain is a few weeks old. It's a colleague of mine registered one. Sweden allows using Hebrew in the .se domain, Hebrew written using Hebrew, so to speak. No, yeah, sorry, allows using Yiddish written in Hebrew. .com and .net are a problem, but I don't regard it as a problem for these drafts. More a subclass of a larger problem. .com contains a lot of domains that are not healthy, about 1,000. 1 or 2 domains that break the rules in my drafts don't really matter. Something I did not anticipate was length limits. I didn't want to add length limits and didn't add it, but people who filter email want to have length limits. I and others also didn't anticipate that accent might be a problem. They are necessary for some scripts, but might be a problem for others. Don't yet have any sort of opinion on that, but we'll get to that. Because the accent problem is arguably kind of solved by the large open issue. This is political. In my drafts, there is a right-hand side and a left-hand side. The right-hand side uses the character repertoire from the LGR in practice. It may also use, in some cases, it uses a more restricted repertoire. However, it always is within LGR. By which I mean common LGR, sorry. However, the LGR, where the label generation rules were not designed for local parts. Instead, there are 2 other character repertoires, one by Unicode, UAX31, and one by more or less a single IETF participant, Precis, RFCA 264. I am really uncertain which of these 3 can be best for these documents. LGR has the advantage that you need that code anyway for the domain. So why not use it for the local part? UAX31 is slightly different, not very much. Has the advantage that the Unicode Consortium maintains it. They really pay attention to it. And Precise gives us harmony with RFC 8264 and the subsequent RFCs. I do not understand the IETF Unicode politics situation for that choice. UAX31 takes a position on using accents. If that is chosen, then I think the accent problem kind of disappears.
John, do you have a comment on this slide?
No, my comments are probably more general. So while I could pick at this slide and the previous one, we should probably let this presentation continue and I'll step in.
Okay.
I didn't quite catch that.
I think he wants you to finish.
Right, fine. Length limits, I would want us as a group to just pick a number. Maybe something like the existing 64 octet, and also a limit of, say, 40 code points for the local part. I don't think the exact number really matters, but there probably has to be a length limit, and what should it be? This is, of course, a bike shed issue. And the problem with accent is that for some scripts, people are not used to there being an accent. And if you put a single dot below, a Unicode single dot below, on one of the characters in the local part, people will just assume there's a fleck on the screen. In other scripts, they are used to there being accent and may catch the errant accent. This was posed to me as a problem, and I suppose some sort of decision has to be made, maybe just by following Unicode. That would be fine with me. John, I think this is the last of mine. Ken, is this the last slide? I think so. Right, so John, go ahead.
Yeah, as we've discussed extensively off list, I'm very much in favor of our having some guidance here. And as a consequence, I'm very sympathetic to these efforts. But I think we're at a point where things need a lot of work. To use just a couple of examples from what's come up in your slides and on the list, on the chat, I think a lot of work is still needed here. One of the problems is that the terminology confuses the issues. Unicode, well, let me not go there. Many of these issues are very, very general issues with the interface between internationalization and user experience. And that's a really tough problem. I've pointed out on and off for years that the major religions of the world all have stories about how languages diverged, or many of them, if not all, have stories about how languages diverged and writing systems diverged. So there's great mutual incomprehensibility, and they mostly blame it on divine intervention, which the IETF is not going to be able to fix. When we start talking about accents, we're confusing the issue with various other sorts of markings on or around or inside characters. Again, we can go very far down this list. Pete Resnick made a comment on the chat that that confusability about local parts is well, my rephrasing is ultimately a problem for the mail system manager and not a problem for global interventions, because in the typical mail system, it makes lots of difference who the audience is going to be. And our reality, which we recognized perhaps too strongly back when we defined non-ASCII, local parts of non-ASCII email addresses, is that the reality is that in international interchange of these addresses, you better hold your nose and stick with ASCII, unlimited international interchange. And within a country, all sorts of things work very well, and the limitations are obvious. Again, doesn't make this work less valuable as general guidance, but I think we need to be very careful where we tread here, and careful about the terminology, and careful about which alligator-infested swamps we put our feet into. And much longer version of that tirade, but the media isn't long enough.
I confess to some guilt here. I used the word accent. The proper term would have... okay, here comes the guilt. Would have triggered this line overflow, or just been too long. So I picked the short word. I know it's incorrect. But
the slightly more correct term is diacritical mark, but the problem is the same. And sometimes diacritical marks are really add-on diacritical marks, and sometimes they're integral parts of the letter. And when you mentioned Yiddish written in Hebrew, that actually turns out to be one of the examples, because a particular mark glyph combination, which is simply diacritical markings and a vowel in Hebrew, turns out to be a letter in Yiddish. And these problems, again, are pervasive enough around the world to make trying to draw these distinctions on a global basis very, very difficult. I think very useful general things can be said. I don't think this document has quite right yet, and we can continue to pick at that until it's right if there's agreement that's useful, which I think it is, but this isn't there yet.
Well, in the case of Yiddish written in Hebrew, the problem is limited to one domain, and the owner of that domain is willing to change. So,
well, but
people haven't actually registered a lot of these. I think I think that Yiddish written in Hebrew, a domain in Yiddish written in Hebrew should be under a top-level domain also written in Hebrew, and that is under.
Stick to local parts for a moment.
Okay.
Right. Domains are a whole different thing and an interesting topic. But local parts, where what I want is and by the way, this is Pete Resnick, sorry. Where what I want is, some representation of me, and often that's going to be my name. There, diacriticals and all sorts of other stuff are very much going to depend on what I can type on my keyboard without holding down lots of funky things. And you've seen French keyboards, you've seen Norwegian keyboards, you've seen all different keyboards that it's much easier to type the ones with the diacritical than without. Now, US keyboards and English keyboards are an interesting special case, because typing the I without the diacritical is much harder, but it's also in ASCII. But those kinds of examples are in all other languages. So John's right. When it comes to domains, there's a whole list of considerations. When it comes to local parts, I think you really want to say in this document, that's going to be up to the provisioner to make sense of what local provisioning is good and shouldn't enter in some broader context of trying to limit the characters in some global way. I don't think it's going to work out well.
Well, your opinion exactly matches the current text, so that's good. However, the current text also ran into reservations because it allows diacritical marks combined with scripts where no diacritical marks are used and where almost invisible diacritical marks can be used to confuse users.
So I guess here's my question. When it comes to local parts, where is the confusion if someone attempts to put an odd diacritical mark on a character for which it really doesn't belong, let's say?
Right.
What is the confusable issue there? That's what I'm not seeing. I mean, I'm okay with the text as is. I'm just trying to figure out where the edge cases that you're thinking about come into play that you want to add something else.
Now, my personal opinion is that for local parts, it's okay. What I wrote is okay. However, if I run into implementer reservations, then running into implementer reservations is a problem. Even if there might be problems here. See what I mean?
I'm not sure.
In some cases, implementer reservations are right. You should, for example, not be able to use a Unicode direction transition code point in a local part. In this case, I personally don't see the problem with them. I'm just mentioning it because it has been raised to me.
John, did you jump back in or you just been hanging in the queue?
No, I jumped back in deliberately, took myself out and then put myself back in, so I'd be behind Pete.
Go ahead.
The difficulty here is that one can say, again, sticking momentarily to local parts, one can say to a mail system operator / name allower that that various kinds of things are bad news and are often bad news. And that's fine. And as long as the document is going no further than that, I think we're in great shape. But as soon as we start making the kinds of distinctions which have been talked about in the last 5 minutes, we get into trouble. If Pete sometimes decides to write his last name with an accent mark, not just a diacritical, over one of the syllables to indicate which way he pronounces it, that's a perfectly legitimate thing for Pete to do. If Pete has the expectation that that will be ignored, for example, by a sending MUA and figure out what the address is going to be, then he's in big trouble. Everybody else is too. If somebody decides that an accentless name, and again, I'm using accent for convenience in Latin script because we all understand it. If an accentless name is considered equivalent to a accented form by the receiving MTA and MUA, then that's dandy, and it's ultimately no different from their considering upper and lowercase the same or different as they prefer, because that's what the specs say. Although the specs also says if you take advantage of that case distinction, you're looking for trouble, and that I think is a good sort of guideline in this area. But again, going very far in that direction is potentially very problematic. And then moving on to domain names, the difficulty is that the email providers in much of the world are not connected to the domain name. If those email providers are local, are not connected to domain name under which they may be registered 2 or 3 levels down. And when we're in a situation in which I can, and the relevant working groups who worry about that, have absolutely refused, because they have no authority, to make rules as distinct from general recommendations about second level naming, then having this working group get into that swamp seems to me is a terrible idea independent of whether it's out of scope, which I think it is also. I think moving in this direction is a good idea. I just don't think this work is nearly ready at this point. And the comments made so far by any of us all point in that direction.
Yeah, I agree. We need some more work on the document. Okay, we've got two more people in the queue. I've closed the queue, so we're going to finish with Daniel so we can move on.
Right, quick comments. John, you actually suggested text to me just now. Thanks.
Okay, Brian.
Yeah, I was going to say, because I heard some mutters about someone having a name that's a lookalike to your name at Gmail, and then people thinking it's you. You would expect something like Gmail to not allow someone to create hostmaster, and that just looks like hostmaster, and people will think it's a legitimate Google email. Certainly, you can, when you're allocating the names, you can define a much stricter scope. And I think a document that says, don't do anything weird unless you have to is pretty much what we want. Advice to name allocation, restrict like this. We restrict a lot more than that, obviously, at FastMail.
Yeah, well, of course.
Okay, it sounds like we've got a lot more discussion to take place on the list before we resolve these issues. All right,
Good
thank you,
items.
Brian. All right. Okay, next up, Simon. Simon, would you like to control the slides yourself, or would you like me to do it for you?
Yes, please. Can I control it?
Okay, you should have control.
Okay, so it won't take too long. This is a presentation about some follow-up with the fallback you gave about the first presentation about the web push extension. So the most important thing is the payload of the push notification. I have rewritten it to use JSON. The main reason is because IMAP connection and push notifications are two different channels, and JSON parsers are common and trivial, and we don't need any access to IMAP libraries parsers. I've also added a notify like filter. It borrows event groups from notify extension. This is to limit the amount of non-necessary push notifications. Someone told me that clients should not be able to access other clients' push endpoints. Therefore, the web push responses have been edited to not send the endpoint, but an alias. And finally, I've added a push ID to push notifications. It can be used to know if we receive the notification out of orders or if a push notification is missing. And finally, so I guess from the mailing list we had the consensus about the need for web push for IMAP. I don't know what is the next step for this. Maybe we should look at JMAP payloads to use the same keys, but I don't know if it's necessary. And a draft is in progress. I'm just waiting for some feedback before merging and publishing a new draft.
First point on here is a consensus about the need. What are your thoughts about the need for this? Like, who is asking for it? We have some constraints we have to observe about implementations. So how would you summarize the interest in this so far?
I know there are some projects interested in this subject. Today we have proprietary implementation for push notifications. We are all waiting for JMAP adoption because it has it built in. But if we have this extension, we can already use it in IMAP clients.
So there are implementations of this. JMAP aside, are there IMAP implementations of this, or is it just a proposed idea right now?
Mox developer has started to implement it, and on the client side, I'm not aware of any yet.
Okay.
I didn't catch that. Who tried to implement that?
Mox, the server.
Anybody in the room have interest in this work? And second question, if you do have an interest, would you try implementing this either in a client or a server?
Alexi, you want to say something? He's the only one I saw gesture in some way. Alexi is gesturing and saying unsure, just so that the notes have it.
Did you pose a question to the list?
Yeah, we can discuss this on the list to gauge interest before we make any sort of adoption decision.
Ben, did you have another comment?
Yeah, just to answer to your question, a very strong interest in web push for IMAP in general as a topic. As I mentioned before, I don't think this specification matches at all how I would design this. So yes, in the topic, but not particularly this direction. And I would also like to implement that once it's implemented here.
Just for you gave some comments about the draft, and most of your comments were addressed, and this is what I wanted to show you. If you want to give a look, it's online.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Simon. We'll take the questions to the list to gauge the level of interest in moving forward with this.
Okay.
Okay, next up is Rick.
Hello.
Rick, do you want to drive?
Yeah, sounds good if it works. Hey, it looks like it works. Okay, so this is a document that is not exactly a specification of anything new. We have a lot of those already. There's like a whole lot. This is not a complete list, but this is sort of the list of all the many of the still active IMAP extensions that you have to consider when starting to implement an IMAP client or server. It's too many, so I want to add another one. The document that we're talking about is sort of a big should. It's a list of extensions that we consider the most effective things for clients and servers to implement. The we here is a bunch of client and server developers who got together and had a conversation about this and other things about 1.5 years ago. So this list might want an update or two. The most effective here is a question of what is going to be widely implemented. I'll come back to that. Reduce bandwidth or round trips to accomplish common actions, to reduce weird states or user confusion or other user confusion. I'll come back to that too, and get rid of half-committed states where we've partly done something and partly not. The widely implemented is important here because the point of the document is to help people understand if you are implementing a server or a client, what things are going to provide immediate value. So they have to provide value, but it has to really be out there. Meaning, if you're writing a server, clients need to already be able to use it. If you're writing a client, servers need to already support it. This isn't a place that I want to put recommendations for. Here's a standard we just wrote that we think that you should write. Every extension is in effect already doing that on its own behalf. Right? Every extension is saying, please adopt me. We want to say these are ones that have already succeeded in the marketplace. And we're telling you that we've done the research and we're saying this is important. when I was writing the document, I was looking at some prior art. There's the most notable one is 2683, which is IMAP implementation recommendations. This isn't really about extensions. It's about if you are implementing IMAP, here are notes about what's going to make it the best IMAP implementation you can do. It's also the source of something you see in this document that says, we're not using 2119 should and should not. We have our own idiosyncratic meaning, which is basically you should do this if you want the best IMAP experience, and you shouldn't do this if you want the best IMAP experience. These are the actual suggestions. So the heavy bold ones are the strong suggestions, and the not grayed out ones are lighter suggestions that are, look, if you did all the first stuff, maybe come back to this. They break down into things that are done for efficiency, which is to say reducing round trips, reducing actual bandwidth required, reducing startup time for the client. For consistency, so we talk about move because you can't half move a message, special use because you can't have your sent, you shouldn't have your sent mail configured to 2 different folders on 2 different clients. And we threw one in for debuggability for good sake, which is the ID command to help you figure out what client is behaving in what way. Those are the broad strokes. The document talks about it a bit more detail. So that's it. That's the proposed work. Mostly, I'm looking for the document to be fully adopted. I don't think it is yet. To get consensus on the specifics. Like I said, the conversation about this was 18 months ago, and it was not a full IETF conversation. It was a bunch of people in a room. And then preferably use this to start rounding out the behavior of existing clients and servers to come up to speed with the recommendations. So that's all the slides.
Great. Thanks, Rick. We have some comments. Arndt, you are first.
Can you talk a little about the relationship between this set and IMAP 4 revision 2? Which, well, it's a superset, okay? But is the difference big enough, and why? What motivates the difference?
Yep.
Having too many almost equal things is bad.
Sure, I agree. So I think that the IMAP revision 2 does not include all of these suggestions. And I think that I read the motivation behind IMAP 4 Rev 2 as these are the things you really have to do to be compliant, to provide basic IMAP service to someone. And there remain a lot of potential extensions for getting a different experience. And this is a list of, if you choose to implement these, you will already be compliant with IMAP 4 Rev 2, or at least Rev. This is built. The document is built on Rev 1, but it calls out some things from Rev 2. You will already be compliant. This will give your users a better experience. So these are the ones that are the most effective things that we encourage for like standard user use. Does that answer your question?
I guess. Barry.
So this is Barry Lieba. IMAP 4 Rev 2's goal wasn't to say these are the extensions you have to implement to have a decent IMAP. It was broader than that. It was more, this is a good set of extensions that we recommend for the modern day, that sort of thing. And you are saying that's changed since we put out 3051, whatever RFC number it was, IMAP 4 Rev 2. Yes, that's going to be a moving target. And at some point, maybe we need an IMAP 4 Rev 3 because there are enough new extensions coming around. If these are just, I would rather you build this off of IMAP 4 Rev 2 if what you're doing is saying we have more extensions that we're recommending since IMAP 4 Rev 2 came out.
I think there's another.
It's going to be a rolling thing.
I would have to go look at some of the notes I had on this, which unfortunately I'm traveling. I don't have everything in front of me, but I would say that a number of things in IMAP 4 Rev 2 that I believe are required are not the most effective things you could do if you currently had a Rev 1 server that only supported revision 1. and wanted to get up to speed with what's going to benefit your users most. The thing that jumps into my head, if I remember correctly, is 64-bit sizes. If you had 32-bit size support in your IMAP server and someone said, what's the most important thing to implement next? It would not be 64-bit sizes, even if that got you to revision 2. If you didn't have quick resync, it would be that.
I mean, I guess what I'm saying is that I would like to see us build off of IMAP 4 Rev 2 rather than
forking. Yeah, no, I understand the broad.
Rather than forking from Rev 1. And if what that takes us to is at some point putting out a Rev 3 that's another snapshot of where we should be with the base plus extensions, then that's fine. But I think forking is a bad answer.
This conversation seems very focused so far on the server side of things. I think one of the benefits of a document like this is for a client author to be told, you're going to get the most benefit out of reading this spec and implementing this, because when you connect to the world's servers, you'll find 70% of them do this. Whereas if you use this thing that seems like it's really awesome, there's only one implementation in the world, so it's not going to be as useful. And that kind of guidance in an informational document, I think, is worth doing. It's not normative. It's not like IMAP 4 Rev 2 is a normative specification saying do this. This is saying if you do this, your life will be better. So repeat on like, I'll buy that. Barry says, I'll buy that.
Yeah.
Alexi.
Yeah, also that might have been obsoleted by the discussion we just, Bron and Barry just had, but also in response to Barry, I think this is also, this applies nearly equally for both IMAP for F1 and F2. So it will be, it's not taking, you know, F1 into a different direction. It's still going to be roughly in the same direction. I mean, like move, I think it's part of Ref 2, and
yes,
it's recommended here. But I think const and quick resync were mentioned in Ref 2.
Yeah, they're not required.
Exactly, and this is kind of trying to move the bar slightly higher.
Yeah, this is Ken speaking as an individual. I don't think the intention here is to fork the spec. I think it's more writing a BCP with guidance to clients and servers.
Yeah, and if I can jump in to respond to that very briefly, or to build on that, that's, first of all, that's originally what we were calling this, a BCP, and someone said, don't say BCP, you're going to get into a whole mess of what that actually means at the IETF. But the other part is, you know, Alexi brings up queue resync. I think that it makes a lot of sense to not make queue resync a requirement for Rev 2 or maybe even Rev 3, right? You don't need that to have functional access to IMAP. There's a baseline you require, but what's the most effective extension to add for an end user? I think it's that.
Looks like Barry wants one more comment.
Yeah, Barry was having trouble flipping his bit there. Barry Liebe again. Then with that in mind, maybe consider whether informational is right or whether making it an applicability statement at proposed standard is right. Because I like applicability statements. And
that language was mentioned.
A good client will do this. That can be done either way. And yeah, maybe make it an applicability statement.
I just got instant heartburn hearing that.
Yeah. That seems reasonable. I don't know enough about the document types. I'll get some feedback from Ken and some other folks.
Go ahead, Ben.
I have only opinion to offer, no insight. From a big picture, the big problem with IMAP is there's way too many extensions, and you don't know which ones to implement and which one can you rely on. From a client perspective, I don't know what is out there, how many servers are supporting QC resync, is it worth implementing? And I think there's a lot of confusion on the client side about what is worth implementing as far as user advantage, but also implementation on the server side. So I think this is coming from the good heart or from a good direction. I think the direction is good. But what I would really like to see is an IMAP 4 Ref 3 and then it mandates this and some kind of push the service to actually implement that, so that we can actually rely on that, so that we level basically the standard IMAP is now this, and either you come aboard or you are left behind, this kind of notion, and that I don't have to pick and choose. Maybe I have cruising, but I don't have this other thing, and then I have all the combinatorial problem. That is my problem as a client, this combinatorial problem that I have this spec but not these other, and then I have so many ifs in my code base that I don't want to have.
This is Ken as chair. I think if we were even going to consider IMAP 4 Rev 3, that would be too large of a project for this working group, and it would have to probably be its own. Bron?
I just want to sabotage all this work so people do JMAP instead. I don't want to make it too easy to do too many more revs to IMAP. Let's make it easy for people to use what they got, but then get them on JMAP.
Okay, just a quick show of hands, or I can actually do it in the tool, I guess, but do it in the tool. Okay. Yeah, whether it be informational or AS, we can decide that later, but is this work that's interesting to folks?
It's anonymous.
It is. Okay, yeah, I think, yeah, just a quick show of hands. I think we're in a pretty good spot here, Rick. I will take this to the list and do a call for adoption.
Great, thanks very much.
All right, thank you. Okay, next up we have Morrow. You can use the clicker.
Okay, hi everybody. So this talk is about MTA hooks, new MTA filtering protocol. So the goal of MTA hooks is to replace Milter. And so this is a brief introduction to Milter for those who are not aware of what it is. So Milter was created by SendMail. It allows external scanners and filters to intercept the SMTP transactions and perform certain actions, such as, I don't know, modifying the envelope, changing the message contents, rejecting the message, quarantining the message, and so on. It is supported by multiple MTAs, of course, SendMail, Postfix, also Stalwart, of course, and yeah, and it's widely used. Although Milter was designed to work with SendMail, it's been used by many other products as a filtering protocol over the network. For example, RSpamD, a very popular spam filtering solution, Clamab, antivirus, and Spam Assassin, they all use Milter as their interface. And there are multiple providers that are running clusters of these services, RSpamD, and they're sending requests over the network to handle their filtering needs. Okay. The problem that Milter has, well, is it works well. It's not that it has a problem. It's a problem that it's a binary protocol that is not documented. The API is documented, but it's only a C API. As far as I know, there are no other implementations for other languages. And the only way to implement Milter is to reverse engineer the C API and to see how the binary protocol works, and then implement that in your language of choice. So yeah, also you have some problem with that. Since it is a binary protocol, you miss one bit to set one bit, and you get unexpected behavior. Yeah, and also does not support other stuff that some scanners need, like sharing state between filters. So the question is if we really need to standardize something like this, a filtering protocol. Yeah, and the reason why this matters is because Milter is using as a network protocol already. There are like different vendors are using Milter as their interface, as the protocol to offer to interact with their products. Yeah, also, yeah, having a standard, it will help innovate new filtering policy solutions and so on. Yeah, and it will provide a clean, consistent way to create filters. Okay, and yeah, why not use webhooks or scripts? So webhooks, yeah, as you know, they're passive. They do not let you tell the server what to do with that information. Running local scripts like postfix and xim and others is limiting. Perhaps you want to run that on a cluster, or you don't have access to run a script on the same server where the MTA is. And yeah, and it's not flexible or portable. Here's MTA hooks, which is a modern mail filtering interface. So MTA hooks is language agnostic, transport agnostic. That is the main goal. It doesn't. So the main goal is that it's language agnostic, and it could be made also transport agnostic, and it's simple to implement, and it's extensible, and flexible as well. The reason why MTA hooks was developed is because in the Stalwart mail server, the first release included, of course, Milter support and also something called pipes, which were basically scripts, but no one liked that. They did not want to debug Milter. They didn't even think that Milter was an option to be used. They didn't know how to use it, and scripts were limiting. And they wanted something easy to implement, something they know. And that's why MTA hooks was created, which is uses JSON, HTTP and JSON. And yeah, it is much easier to use from any language, and anyone can get started with MTA hooks. So MTA hooks is very simple. The MTA sends a post request at the different during the SMTP transaction. There's one for connect, mail from, RCPT, and so on. Or you can choose to send an entire request at the end of the transaction, at the end of the data stage for final action. That is configurable. So the payload is JSON, but if needed, we could also use binary format like message pack and so on. And then the scanner replies with what the server, what the MTA should do. Yeah, and the MTA acts based on what the scanner or filter wants. Yeah, this is how it works. You send a connect request with all the information, the IP addresses and other metadata. Then there is a request for mail from, RCPT, data, and so on. And it replies with which actions to perform: reject, modify, remove a sender, change the message contents, and so on. So why I think we should standardize something like MTA hooks is because it will help to make MTAs interoperable. It simplifies development, so it allows new solutions to emerge. Yeah, and it helps to formalize what RSpamD and other filtering solutions are doing. And there have been already some plugins created using MTA hooks on GitHub. I found a few. So people seem to like it and be using it. And I want to clarify that MTA hooks is not just filtering; it could be also to intercept messages for policy, to add disclaimer notices, or anything that it's required. So it's not just filtering. Anything that is related to interception is also handled by MTA hooks. So there are a few questions that, because currently the current definition of MTA hooks sends the, it works very similar to Milter in the sense that you get the headers, parse headers, parse where the header name starts and where the value starts, they're not decoded. And so the first question is for the message contents, because I discussed briefly last year MTA hooks with Rob Miller from Fastmail, and they will prefer using something like JMAP, the decoder, the nested MIME structure of the message. And the problem with that is that some scanners like RSpamD and Spam Assassin, they need access to the raw message to see if there are some failures encoding the MIME contents which are associated with spammers or virus anyway. So we need to either choose one or support both somehow, like negotiating with the client how they prefer the content to be sent. Then another issue is the encoding of bodies, because now it's being sent in as a text and encoded string. This is not very efficient. And so we should probably base 64 encode that or send it separately. And then the binary alternatives, if we don't like JSON being the only option, add other possibilities. And how to make this extensible and security if needed. And what I'd like to hear before proposing an internet draft is, is this something that you agree is necessary, and and if you have any ideas, suggestions, this is the link to the current spec. It means nothing is part of the documentation. Is as I said, it's very simple. It's just a request, a schema with the request, and then how the response looks like, and that it is, and that's it basically.
All right, thanks, Merle. The chairs have some opinions on this, but we'll go to the queue first. Go ahead, Barry.
I don't know, maybe I'd prefer to hear the chair's opinions, but this is Barry Liba. So I'll start off by saying I think it would be important to standardize a protocol like this. But as I said on the list, we tried to do that on the order of 20 years ago with OPES, and it got no uptake at all. So one question is, why is this going to be different? And the feedback we've gotten so far from one server implementer is they wouldn't implement it because they don't have any HTTP engine in there right now, and so they don't want to add it. I'd like to hear more feedback on that from other implementers, whether this is an outlier or whether it will be as ignored as OPES was. But I think it is important to have a standardized protocol to get in this space. Why do you think this will get uptake where OPES didn't?
Regarding implementation, I contacted the RSpamD developer, and he said he would implement it. And I know from user committees that already, but these are users working on using already stalwart, so that doesn't count as much. But then what you were saying about that they don't have an HTTP stack, and what I would say is that nowadays, like a modern MTA probably has that, because if they're doing TLS reporting, one way to send TLS reports is over HTTP, so they're probably support that. And also it's it's a modern, now I know that the web HTTP is taking over everything. That's why I'm proposing also to use another alternative transport protocol. And yeah, the hope I have is that since I'm in contact with different also scanner implementers to invite them to implement this new protocol. Yeah, that's it.
Real quick, I've closed the queue. I'd like to save some time for DKG here, so if we can make our comments quick.
Quick comment. This is way too big for MailMaint. I think there's that guy in the hat back there that's looking very worried right now.
Where?
You should.
There's nobody back there with a hat.
Don't see a thing. Yeah, that guy who formerly had a hat on. Go talk to him about setting up a BOF for this, because there's a lot of work here. We need to make sure you've got enough people who are willing to come to the IETF to get going on this work. I think this is a cool idea, interesting, might have some controversial bits, but MailMaint is made to work on small little things that we just need to get done.
Okay.
This ain't it.
I trust, for me it looks very small because it's just a very small payload, but I trust your advice.
Just even reviewing the specs that are out there on the website now, I thought, oh, that's a lot of work to review that size.
Okay.
So yeah, I think this just needs to be buffed, and I think that'll work out fine.
Yeah, okay. I think I speak for my co-chair. We agree on this. I said privately to Marie that I think there's people outside this group that would have a vested interest in this, maybe even expertise that's not in this room. So yeah, the BOF sounds right to me.
On the other hand, I would be happy to help write a BOF proposal or a charter to keep this moving. So. The working group or a BOF? BOF, yes.
Okay, Jim, quickly, if you may.
Yeah, Jim Clinton. I hope I'm not getting ahead of myself with this question, but a long time ago when we were there were some things that we were looking at milters for, and we wish that we had a similar capability on the output side of the MTA. I think we informally said what we need is a molter. So is there a capability like this to put this hook on either the input or the output side of the MTA? And you don't need to answer it now, but just something to think about.
Yeah. Arndt mentioned something similar, that he wanted to track the entire message also between nodes. So he mentioned also adding like a small SMTP extension to keep track of the transaction ID.
Really, I was thinking about, things that you might, if the MTA modified the message in some way and was the first signer, wanted to do like a DKIM signing on the output side rather than the input side.
Yeah.
This is Hans-Jörg. As somebody recently struggling with Milter, I very much appreciate any effort on making it a little better here. Maybe as an argument to what Barry said, if there was some attempt in the past, probably I think many people are more frustrated than by the current state of the art and might be more willing to act on this, but yeah, I don't know. I also second what Jim said. So input, output, both very interesting. It actually works, at least on postfix with milters. It's just incredibly hard to get out of the documentation. So maybe talk to me. It might be something on the conceptual level to make also clear for people reading this, because it can confuse you a lot in this whole MTA situation. Final thing, I'm not an expert in this area, but to my understanding, also a lot of these, MTA incoming queues sometimes use CIF rules, also for spam interaction with spam filtering and these kind of things. So I wonder a little bit how that would fit together in the end, but it's probably not a question to answer by now.
Okay.
Yeah, I think if we're going to BOF this, a lot of the technical questions can move there. Go ahead, Bron.
Yeah, I don't want to spend too long on it because we will talk about it later. Fastmail is doing something similar to this internally. I think HTTP is the way to go for the future. It's easy to add an HTTP client to anything these days. There's tons of libraries. There's a lot more MTAs than the few big open source ones out there that might say they don't want to implement this, and they're doing a ton of stuff with HTTP already internally. So that's going to be the future, I think.
Graham?
Okay.
Yeah, Graham Orndorff. I'll say more or less the same thing that Bron was just about to say. So
Okay, great.
I'll let it go for the BOF.
Okay, cool.
Okay, all right, last word. The last one in the queue before I locked it.
Right.
I was there, but I slept, so I
Fine.
slept.
Anyway, I like this in general. I think that the buff is a good idea. I'd really like to understand why Opus failed. It may have been something as simple as not collecting a couple of high-profile initial implementers. That kind of thing matters. But I'd like to understand why it failed. I think understanding why the previous effort failed is key to getting this effort to not fail.
Okay, yeah, I personally don't know. I have to do some research on that.
Yep. Okay. Start by asking. Well, no, that wasn't what I will start by asking a couple of the major spam filtered people whether they are even aware of Opus.
Okay.
All right, Lexi, real quick, 30 seconds.
Yeah, we have something similar in our own implementation. This looks interesting, but I would like to buff it because basically knowing who will implement it before we commit effort.
DKG, do you have a comment on this, or are you just getting ready for your presentation?
Just ready for the presentation.
All right. Would you like to drive the slides?
I've already requested slides, but there we go. All right, let's see if
You've
this
got
works.
it.
Thanks. So at Dispatch on Monday, I raised this work that Andrew Gallagher and Kai Engert and I have put together. This was work coming out of the OpenPGP email summit this summer. The goal is to make it easier to do end-to-end cryptographic signatures on clear text email. I see Barry's already in the queue. Barry, do you want me to run through this, or do you want to jump in?
No. I'm queued up for when you're done.
Great. Okay. So the motivation here is that we, when you're used to signing mail, there's a bunch of sort of things you stub your toe on often. And it makes people reluctant to just unilaterally say, I'm going to sign every message that I can sign. And the three main things that we identified were, one is you might send a mail that's completely unreadable. And this is PKCS7 signed data format is completely unreadable by legacy clients. The second one is other signature formats show legacy recipients an unknown attachment. Then you get feedback from your recipient of, hey, I can't read your attachment. Can you help me? Can you send it back? And you have to go through that again. That's a pain. And then the third thing is that even in some clients that can read these things, if the mail gets modified in transport, say by a MTA hook or some other thing that breaks the signature, then they get a big fat warning that says, warning, signature broken. And if I was an attacker, what I would do is I would just strip the signature and then modify the mail, and then there would be no big fat warning. So the fact of the signature being present is more likely to cause damage to the user experience than the signature just being absent. So these are all reasons why people don't want to sign their mails. And we'd like people to be able to just say, yeah, we're going to sign all the mail. So this is a proposal for a different structure of a mail message to provide for end-to-end cryptographic signatures. And it is going to be invisible to legacy mail user agents. That is, the message should appear as though it was unsigned to them. There's no difference for any other message. It should just appear basically normally. Even for existing mail user agents that are cryptographically aware, they will just see it as an unsigned message. Again, no big fat red warning. And the specification mandates that if you're going to interpret this, you must show no scarier than unsigned when you see a broken message. And as a bonus, because this is being written after the recent end-to-end, the header protection drafts that came through LAMPS, all the header fields are also going to be covered, that the sender knows about are going to be covered by the end-to-end signature. So you're going to get header protection in addition to the message. The way that it's done is it's a simple multi-part mixed node as the main object in the message. And then the header, it has a single child node, that's the actual message. And then the signature appears, and then all of the headers from the outside are also copied on the inside. And it just shows up as a standard message. I've been sending mail like this for a couple months now, and I've gotten no complaints. I've also gotten nobody telling me that my messages are signed, but that's okay. I've gotten nobody telling me that they can't open it or that there's an unreadable attachment. And it's currently focusing on OpenPGP. We could extend it to SMIME if people are interested. It's designed so that it could be extensible. And it's only for signed only messages. If you're going to do encryption and signatures, the current standards work fine. We don't think we have any problem with those. So I recommend that this is only used for signed only messages, but that's the place where it would be useful. And these are my slides from dispatch. During dispatch, it was thought that it could be brought here. So I'm asking if dispatch would be interested in adopting it. I understand we can't adopt it in this session right now with 5 minutes left in the session, but I am on the MailMaint mailing list. I have heard no complaints from my co-authors about having MailMaint adopt this. If MailMaint is interested, we would love to process this document here in the working group, and with the usual caveats of change control belonging to the working group. Barry.
This is Barry Liba. I've read this already. I see only good in it, and no downsides, and it looks great. The only reason that I would say that we wouldn't do it is if we find some sense where we ought to roll it into DKIM as some sort of a first hop MUA to MSA DKIM signature of some sort. But otherwise, yes, let's do this.
So I want to be clear that so DKIM is not end-to-end. Just for setting calibrating folks, if this is intended as MUA to MSA, that's also not end-to-end. And so I would if that's what you want to turn this document into, I would say, well, let's not do it here. If the MSA is willing to look at the end-to-end signature and they want to do something with it, I have no objection. But if we're targeting the MSA, that's not the goal of this.
No, I didn't mean it in that sense. I meant just mechanically putting it in that way, not interpreting it in a non-end-to-end way.
Got it. Makes sense.
This is Bron. Pretty much what Barry said. I've done a lot of thinking and talking about this over the past couple of days. I think that there is some real value in having this use the same mechanisms as DKIM2. In particular, having it that DKIM2 doesn't break this. So having the undo mechanism that DKIM2 has allow you to undo all the way back to the sender, not just to the first hop domain. Obviously, the key distribution system would be different in terms of how that very first bunch of hashes of whatever's in the message is signed, but using the same mechanism and having the same undo path so that as a recipient, you can tell not only what the first domain said, but you can undo that if the first domain made any changes to get the content of what the sender signed in the first place, I think would be really useful. And having that, I think that's the right way to go with this, is to have it be part of that chain so that you have that chain right back to the sender. And if you have access to their key from whatever mechanism, which is probably not DNS, but you would then be able to confirm that they sent that message with whatever protections the signature gives. And that obviously includes headers as well.
Yeah, so this is spec'd independently of DKIM, and it's actually been designed specifically so that it only touches the body of the message that the sender is producing. So if DKIM is like transforming the messages as they come through and transforming the body, it will be transforming this message. If DKIM is just transforming headers as they send on, then it shouldn't be relevant because the body
DKIM2 does allow transforming the body as well, but it also gives a way to undo those transforms. So I think that's okay. The interesting discussions I've been having earlier today are around whether you're transforming a binary representation of the transport decoded version or whether you're doing the actual bytes that were across the wire. And so that's going to be something that we want to make sure we don't break this in the process.
Right.
2 minutes left, 2 in the queue, and you still want agenda time. Keep going, Pete.
Slicker than spit. I really like it. I am much less sanguine than Bron that this is at all interesting to DKIM, but that's okay. I think it's okay for MailMaint to look at this if LAMPS and OpenPGP both sign off and say, we don't care, whatever you want to do. If they want it or they think it's in their wheelhouse, then I think we don't want to get in the way of that. But as an email mechanism, it looks pretty straightforward and simple, and I like it.
I'm a co-chair of OpenPGP, and I don't complain if it comes into a different working group. We have enough other things to work on in OpenPGP.
Well, and I'll just say we're not inventing any crypto here. I mean, this is just email header shot stuff.
I would suggest, but DCAM has already happened this week, unfortunately. Maybe mention this on this list, see if it gets any reaction beyond, and Braun can say what he just said on that list as well. We can see if they want to pick it up or contribute, and then figure it out from there. I'm having the size question in my head, like, is this too big for here or what? But we can figure that on the list.
Okay, I think it's pretty small, actually. My experience was it's like 20 lines of code in a mail user agent to produce it. So
I guess the chair's probably going to ask you the question, has anyone else implemented it? Do you have multiple implementations?
there are multiple people working on implementing it, yes.
Great. Okay, Braun.
People in the room interested in working on this? I see some thumbs up, at least one thumbs up.
I see two. That's the limit.
Braun, you just want to mention your draft real quick?
Yeah, I sent a draft to the mailing list yesterday. It's object ID partial. Basically say object ID, but I only support mailbox IDs, or object ID, but I only support email IDs. It allows a server that wants to implement part of it without committing to all of it to advertise that fact. I think it's incredibly simple. Please have a look at it, comment on it if you think it's good. I think it's pretty much ready to go. It's like 10 lines of text.
That's it. Thank you for Braun for taking notes. Thank you everybody for coming. We got a lot done here today. Nice work. We'll see you in Montreal.
Alexa, I see you in the queue. Do you want to talk about ossification of MIME?